Meet Daniel, a renowned baker in the quaint town of Willow Creek. His bakery, Daniel's Delights, is famous for its exquisite pastries and custom cakes, making him a beloved figure in the community. But this Valentine's Day, Daniel's renowned organizational skills are facing their biggest challenge yet, a mountain of orders, threatening to overshadow the most important day of the year, his anniversary with his wife, Sarah. Will Daniel's dedication to his business cause him to miss important celebration of his love for Sarah? This story explores the consequences of neglecting personal relationships in the pursuit of success and the power of community in times of need. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from today, and if you enjoy this heartwarming tale of second chances, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. The aroma of warm bread and melting chocolate hung heavy in the air, a comforting perfume that permeated Daniel's Delights bakery. Daniel, a man whose smile lines hinted at years spent kneading dough and crafting elaborate cakes, was a whirlwind of activity. Valentine's Day was just around the corner, and his small-town bakery was bursting at the seams. Orders for heart-shaped cakes, chocolate-covered strawberries, and personalized cookies were piling up faster than he could fill them. The usually meticulous Daniel found himself overwhelmed. He was used to the rush of holiday seasons, but this was different. This year felt especially intense. His wife Sarah, a kindergarten teacher known for her infectious laugh and calming presence, usually helped him manage the pre-Valentine's Day frenzy. But this year, she was dealing with a particularly challenging class, leaving Daniel to navigate the chaos alone. He barely had time to grab a quick bite between frosting cakes and answering phone calls. The pressure was mounting. He was so consumed by meeting every order that even the simple task of taking a break felt impossible. He checked his phone. It was a flurry of emails from clients, texts from his suppliers. He glanced at the calendar pinned on the wall next to his flour sifter, his eyes skimming over the date, February 13th. His heart jumped. The anniversary. A familiar knot of guilt tightened in his stomach. He'd always prided himself on being a devoted husband, but lately the bakery had consumed him. He'd been promising Sarah a romantic dinner, a quiet evening, just the two of them. But the mountain of orders loomed larger than ever. He justified his neglect by telling himself he was working hard to provide for their family, to build a future for them. But deep inside he knew his excuse was flimsy. He glanced at a picture of Sarah and him framed on the counter, their smiles wide and genuine. He remembered their first Valentine's Day together, a simple picnic in the park, a stark contrast to the opulent confections that surrounded him now. He sighed, the fragrant steam from a batch of fresh, baked bread suddenly feeling heavy, laden with regret. He had a mountain of orders, a wife who was probably exhausted, and a looming anniversary he was likely to forget completely. He needed a plan, a miracle, or both. He was so focused on keeping up with the avalanche of orders that he barely had time for anything else. The morning of February 14th arrived, a crisp, sunny day that should have been filled with romance and celebration. For Daniel, it began with a jolt of panic. He woke up in a sweat, the lingering scent of sugar and vanilla clinging to his sleep-deprived senses. He reached for his phone, half expecting a text or call from Sarah. Nothing. He glanced at the calendar again, February 14th, and the realization crashed over him with the force of a tidal wave. Today was their anniversary. He'd completely forgotten. He bolted out of bed, his heart hammering against his ribs. How could he have been so careless? He stumbled towards the kitchen, the guilt gnawing at him like a persistent ache. He made a cup of coffee, his hand trembling slightly as he poured the hot liquid. He had to talk to Sarah. He had to apologize. He had to fix this. He grabbed his phone, his thumb hovering over her contact. He couldn't just send a text. This was too important. He needed to face her in person. He rushed to the bathroom, quickly getting ready. He threw on his clothes, not caring much about how he looked. He had to get to Sarah. He had to show her how sorry he was. He walked out of his house, the bakery only a few minutes away. He wasn't sure what to expect. Would she be angry? Would she be disappointed? He knew he had hurt her, and that hurt more than anything. He arrived at the bakery to a flurry of activity. His staff was working hard, trying to keep up with last-minute Valentine's Day orders. He looked at the long lines of customers and all the orders that were to be delivered that day. He knew he had to work too, but he couldn't bring himself to start. All he could think about was Sarah. He pulled his head baker, Maria, aside. "Maria, can you manage the shop for a bit?" he asked, his voice slightly strained. "I need to go see Sarah. I messed up." Maria, a warm and understanding woman, recognized the panic in Daniel's eyes. "Of course, Daniel, don't worry. We've got everything under control. Go see Sarah. Just hurry back when you can, Oak." Daniel nodded, gratitude washing over him. He rushed out of the bakery, leaving behind the chaos of his business for the quiet of his home. He walked to Sarah's school, his mind racing as he tried to come up with what he could say to her. He needed a plan, a perfect, fool-proof plan to make her forgive him. But, before a plan, he needed to talk to her. He needed to apologize. He was a bit nervous to see her. He knew he had hurt her, and he was scared that she might be too upset to forgive him. He arrived at the school, nervously glancing at the front doors, and walked in. He went to the reception area and asked to speak to Sarah. He paced back and forth, waiting for her to appear. It was like he was waiting for his fate to come to meet him. Finally, Sarah walked out to the reception area. She looked beautiful, even in her casual teacher's attire. But her smile didn't reach her eyes, and he could see a hint of sadness there. "Daniel," she said, her voice surprisingly calm. "What are you doing here?" He took a deep breath, trying to find the right words, the words that would make her understand and forgive him. "Sarah," he began, his voice thick with remorse. "I am so sorry. I completely forgot about our anniversary. The bakery, the orders, everything just overwhelmed me. I know it's not an excuse, but Sarah looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of hurt and disappointment. "I was actually waiting for you, Daniel, maybe expecting a text, a call, anything to let me know you remembered. You know, we've been together for 10 years, and you always made our anniversary special." Sarah replied, her voice filled with a hint of sadness. "It just shows how little you care about me, about us," she said. Daniel's heart sank at her words. He knew he had failed her, and her words were like knives piercing through him. The weight of his mistake felt heavier than any load of flour he had ever carried. He reached out to take her hand, but Sarah stepped away, her expression unwavering. "I need to get back to my class," she said, her voice flat. "Maybe we can talk later." But before Daniel could say anything else, Sarah turned and walked away, leaving him standing there alone, his heart aching with regret. The silence in their usually lively home was deafening. Daniel returned from the school with a heavy heart. The image of Sarah's hurt eyes burned into his memory. He tried calling her multiple times that afternoon, sending text messages filled with apologies and promises to make it up to her, but his calls went unanswered, and his messages were met with silence. It was a silence more painful than any argument. It was a clear wall she'd put up between them, a barrier he didn't know how to break. He wandered through their house, every object a painful reminder of what he had almost lost, or maybe had already lost. The framed photos on the walls, the cozy blankets on the sofa, the half-read books on their nightstands, all silent witnesses to the life he had been so busy neglecting. He noticed the small things he hadn't seen in weeks. A dried-up flower on their kitchen table, a small pile of ungraded school papers on the corner of her desk, the shoes Sarah always wore when teaching in the hallway. It was as if he had been living in his own world and didn't even bother looking up at hers. He had been so preoccupied with the bakery that he had forgotten that he had an entire family waiting for him to get home. He tried distracting himself by working at the bakery. The shop was bustling, the Valentine's Day rush in full swing, but even the sweet smell of baking couldn't mask the bitter taste of his guilt. He tried his best to smile to the customers, to talk to his staff, but all he could think about was Sarah. He was distracted. He kept messing up orders, dropping things. Even burnt some of the pastries. It was as if he had lost his ability to concentrate on anything other than his mistake. He knew Sarah was a forgiving person, but this felt different. This wasn't just a forgotten anniversary, it was a symptom of a larger problem. He had been neglecting their relationship for weeks, letting his passion for his work overshadow his love for his wife. He had been so focused on the bakery that he had forgotten what really mattered: his wife, his relationship, his life outside work. As the evening approached, Daniel's anxiety grew. He closed the bakery, leaving his staff to clean up, and drove home, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. The drive felt longer than usual, every second filled with fear and uncertainty. When he finally walked into the house, it was eerily quiet. Sarah wasn't home. He noticed a small note on the kitchen counter. It was written in Sarah's elegant script, but the message was stark and cold. "I need some space. I'll be staying with my sister for a few days." Daniel's heart dropped. The note was short, impersonal, and it felt like a death sentence. He read the words again, hoping they would somehow change, but they remained as they were. He had messed up. Big time. He sank into a chair at the kitchen table, the weight of his mistake crushing him. He had not only hurt his wife, he had pushed her away. He had prioritized his work over his marriage, and now he was paying the price. He knew he had a long way to go if he wanted to fix his marriage, if he wanted to earn Sarah's forgiveness. And he also knew he had to make it quick. He had to think of a plan. He was determined to do whatever it takes to show Sarah how sorry he was, how much she meant to him. He needed help, he needed support, and he needed a plan. The news of Daniel's blunder, like most news in a small town, traveled fast. Word spread through Willow Creek that Daniel, the beloved baker, had not only forgotten his anniversary, but had also driven his wife to leave. Initially, the gossip was fueled by curiosity and a hint of judgment, but as the townspeople began to realize the depth of Daniel's remorse, a shift occurred. They saw not a neglectful husband, but a man consumed by his passion, a man who had made a mistake, but a man who also deserved a second chance. They recognized that they all had their own daily struggles, and that sometimes we can all fall into bad habits. Mrs. Gable, a regular at the bakery, a woman who always ordered a dozen donuts for her grandchildren, was the first to take action. She had seen the exhaustion in Daniel's eyes in the weeks leading up to Valentine's Day. She was sure he wasn't doing it out of spite. She gathered a few other regulars at the bakery. They included old Mr. Henderson, who always ordered the plain bagel and coffee, and Emily, a single mother who Daniel often helped with free cupcakes for her daughter's birthday. They sat at the bakery, looking at the mountain of pastries that were not being sold, as well as all the work Daniel had put into decorating the shop. "We can't just sit here and do nothing," Mrs. Gable declared, her voice firm. "Daniel needs help, and Sarah needs to know that her community supports her too." The idea resonated with the small group. They decided to organize a small intervention, not to judge Daniel, but to help him fix things. They started by taking it upon themselves to deliver all the remaining Valentine's Day orders. They coordinated themselves so that every order was delivered on time. That freed up Daniel and the staff to focus on making new orders and, most importantly, to focus on the main task, finding Sarah. They then went to the local community center and started posting notes about their plan. The word spread quickly, and soon many people volunteered. They made posters, flyers. They even contacted the local radio station to spread the word. They wanted to help Daniel because they all believed he was a good person. Daniel, meanwhile, was a mix of confusion and gratitude. He walked out of his house to see the townspeople cleaning up around his bakery. He saw his neighbors making posters, the kids making balloons, the older people chatting and organizing the routes for deliveries. He was taken aback by the show of support. It was as if his own community had decided to lift him up from his despair. As the day went on, Daniel joined the volunteer force and started to help with the deliveries. He was shocked at how many people had shown up to support him. He had tears in his eyes as he thanked his neighbors. He was overwhelmed by their support. It was almost as if the whole town had shown up to help him. While helping with the deliveries, many neighbors gave Daniel words of encouragement. They reminded him that everyone makes mistakes and that it was important to learn from them. "Go find Sarah," Emily told him as she handed him a box of cupcakes for a customer. "We got this, Daniel. We believe in you." Daniel nodded, a surge of determination coursing through him. He knew he couldn't just sit and wait for Sarah to come back. He had to fight for her. He had to make her see that he was truly sorry. He was no longer alone in this fight. He had the entire town of Willow Creek behind him, pushing him forward. He had hope now, hope he thought he'd lost completely. He had to find Sarah. He had to start making things right. He knew the community had given him a chance, and he wasn't going to waste it. He had to prove them right. He had to make things right with his wife. He had to start showing her what she meant to him. With the support of Willow Creek bolstering his resolve, Daniel knew he had to find Sarah. He remembered her mentioning her sister, Lisa, lived in a small town a couple of hours away called Meadowbrook. He had never met Lisa, but Sarah had told him countless stories about their childhood, their bond, and the good times they always had together. He knew Sarah wouldn't be anywhere else, but with her sister. He decided he would drive there, apologize to her, and hopefully convince her to give him another chance. He packed a small bag, grabbed a bouquet of Sarah's favorite flowers, a lilacs, he remembered with a pang of guilt, and climbed into his truck. The drive was filled with a mixture of nerves and determination. He replayed the conversation he'd had with Sarah at the school, the hurt in her eyes, the pain in her voice. He knew he had to be sincere. He had to show her that he had truly understood his mistake. As he drove, he received messages from various members of his community, checking on him, offering advice, and telling him they had all his orders covered. They were all helping him, giving him a chance to prove himself worthy of forgiveness. Daniel was more determined than ever to make things right. He was now more aware of what was truly important in his life. He arrived at Meadowbrook, a quaint little town nestled amidst rolling hills. He found Lisa's house, a charming cottage with a white picket fence. He took a deep breath, his hand trembling slightly as he approached the door. He knocked, the sound echoing in the quiet neighborhood. Lisa opened the door, her eyes widening in surprise when she saw him. She was a mirror image of Sarah, but her expression was guarded. "Daniel," she said, her voice a mix of curiosity and apprehension. "What are you doing here?" "Lisa, it's nice to meet you," Daniel replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "I came to see Sarah. I know I made a huge mistake, and I need to apologize to her." Lisa hesitated for a moment, then stepped aside, allowing Daniel to enter. The house was warm and cozy, filled with the familiar scent of home. Sarah was sitting on the couch, a book in her lap, but her eyes were far away, lost in thought. She looked up when she heard Daniel's voice, her expression unreadable. "Daniel," she said quietly, her voice still tinged with hurt. "Sarah, I know I messed up," Daniel began, his voice sincere. "I was so caught up in the bakery that I forgot what really mattered. You? I'm so sorry, more sorry than I've ever been for anything. I completely messed up our anniversary and the way you felt, and that's unforgivable. I know this isn't an excuse, but I promise you, that will never happen again. I promise to always make you a priority, to make you feel special, to remind you of my love for you." He stepped forward, offering her the bouquet of lilacs. Sarah's eyes softened as she took the flowers, the familiar scent filling the room. Daniel looked at Sarah with a mix of anticipation and trepidation. "The whole town is helping me, Sarah," he continued, his voice filled with emotion. "They are delivering the orders, they are taking care of the bakery, they are giving me a second chance. I want to prove to you I can be a good husband, a good man, a man that will always put you first." Sarah's eyes filled with tears as she looked at him. "Daniel, I love you, I really do, but what you did, it hurt. It made me feel like I wasn't important to you," she confessed, her voice trembling. "You are important, Sarah, the most important person in my life," Daniel replied. "I'm such an idiot for making you feel that way. You are everything to me, my world, my wife. Please, forgive me. Let me make it up to you." A silence fell between them, the only sound the gentle ticking of the clock on the wall. Sarah looked at Daniel, searching for any sign of dishonesty, but all she could see was genuine remorse. "I've never stopped loving you, Daniel," she said softly. "I just needed to see that you were truly sorry." A wave of relief washed over Daniel. He moved closer to Sarah and took her hand. "I am Sarah," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm truly, deeply sorry, and I promise I'll never take you for granted again." Sarah smiled, a real smile this time, her eyes sparkling with warmth. "Okay, Daniel, I believe you." The drive back to Willow Creek was filled with a lightness Daniel hadn't felt in weeks. Sarah was beside him, her hand resting comfortably in his, the tension between them replaced with a renewed sense of love and understanding. They talked about everything: the bakery, Sarah's students, their future, and even about Daniel's forgetfulness. Sarah gently teased him about it, but Daniel didn't mind. He knew she was happy, and that's all that mattered. They even laughed as they discussed how he would make up for his blunder. They decided they needed a fresh start. As they pulled into Willow Creek, they were greeted by a sight that warmed their hearts. The town square was decorated with colorful banners, balloons, and handwritten signs that read, "Welcome back, Sarah," and "We love you, Daniel." The whole community had gathered to celebrate their return, a testament to the strength of their small town bonds. Daniel's staff was there too, all waving and cheering as the truck approached the square. Maria, the head baker, ran to Daniel and gave him a big hug. "We're so happy to see you two back together, Daniel," she said. "We missed you. And Sarah, the kids have been asking about you constantly." The whole town was buzzing with excitement. They were so happy to have them back, and even happier to see Daniel and Sarah together. The community had helped them fix their relationship. They were all proud of playing a small part in their love story. Sarah was overwhelmed by the show of support. She had always known Willow Creek was a special place, but she had never realized how deeply rooted the sense of community was until that moment. She hugged her neighbors, thanked everyone, and even shared a few laughs with the kids. Daniel, his heart full, addressed the crowd, his voice sincere and grateful. "I don't know what to say, everyone," he began, his eyes welling up with tears. "I made a mistake. A big one, but you all rallied around me and helped me make things right. I'm so grateful to have you in my life, and to live in such a wonderful community." He turned to Sarah and added, "And most importantly, I'm so grateful to have you back in my life. I love you so much." Sarah blushed, giving Daniel's hand a gentle squeeze. The crowd cheered and applauded, their support evident in their smiles. It was as if the whole town was celebrating their love. The day turned into a small festival. The community had organized games for the kids, food stalls with all sorts of homemade goods, and even a small concert by local musicians. They had taken a bad situation and turned it into a celebration of love, forgiveness, and community spirit. It was something Daniel and Sarah would never forget. As the sun began to set, Daniel and Sarah found themselves sitting on a bench in the park, watching the children play. The bakery was still buzzing with activity, but Daniel had decided to take a break and spend some time with his wife. "Thank you, Daniel," Sarah said, her voice soft, "for coming to find me, for apologizing, and for always being so kind." Daniel smiled, pulling her close. "Thank you, Sarah, for forgiving me. I promise to never forget our anniversary again. I promise to always put you first." Sarah chuckled. "You better not. But, maybe we can start a new tradition. Maybe every February 14th, instead of celebrating just us, we can celebrate the love of our community, all the people that make our life in Willow Creek so special." But Daniel smiled, kissing Sarah softly on her forehead. "That's a great idea. I love you." Sarah smiled, hugging him close. "I love you too." The following year, Valentine's Day in Willow Creek was different. It wasn't just about romantic love. It was a celebration of community, kindness, and second chances. Daniel and Sarah, with the support of their town, organized a community-wide Valentine's Day festival. They called it the Willow Creek Love Fest, a day dedicated to celebrating all forms of love: romantic love, familial love, and the love of community. Daniel's bakery was the heart of it all. He created special heart-shaped pastries, cookies decorated with messages of love and gratitude, and a giant anniversary cake dedicated to the entire town. The bakery was bustling with activity, but this time, Daniel wasn't overwhelmed. He had learned his lesson. He had hired an extra helper to manage the orders, and he had ensured that he had time to spend with Sarah. They worked together, side by side, their love for each other stronger than ever. The festival was a huge success. The town square was filled with families, friends, and neighbors all celebrating together. There were games for the kids, food stalls selling local delicacies, and a stage for local musicians to perform. But the highlight of the day was a speech given by Daniel and Sarah, where they thanked the community for their support and reaffirmed their commitment to each other and to Willow Creek. "We learned a valuable lesson last year," Daniel said, standing hand in hand with Sarah. "We learned that success isn't just about what you achieve, but also about the relationships you build and nurture. We learned that no matter how busy life gets, you have to always prioritize your loved ones and never forget that they are waiting for you to get home." Sarah added, her voice filled with warmth, "But we learned that forgiveness is the greatest gift, and that true love is about support, understanding, and never giving up on each other. And we also learned that a strong community is the foundation of a happy life." And the crowd cheered and applauded, their hearts touched by the sincerity of their words. Daniel and Sarah had become a symbol of love and forgiveness in Willow Creek. They had turned a mistake into an opportunity for growth and community bonding. As the day ended, Daniel and Sarah found themselves sitting on their porch, watching the stars. The kids had been taken home by their neighbors, all the decorations had been put away, and the town was once again quiet. "I'm so happy, Daniel," Sarah said, leaning her head on his shoulder. "This was the best Valentine's Day ever." Daniel smiled, wrapping his arm around her. "Mem too, Sarah. This is the beginning of our new tradition, our new life, a life filled with love, community, and never-ending understanding." They looked at each other, their eyes sparkling with love. They knew that life would have its challenges, but with the support of each other, and with the unwavering love of their community, they could face anything together. Daniel had not only redeemed himself, he had created a new chapter in his life, a chapter filled with purpose, love, and the sweet aroma of forgiveness. He had learned that true success was not about achieving goals, but about cherishing the relationships that truly mattered. And Sarah, she had learned that even the deepest hurts could be healed with forgiveness and unwavering love. And so, in the charming town of Willow Creek, the story of Daniel and Sarah became a timeless reminder that even the biggest mistakes can lead to the sweetest redemptions, and that the love of a community can turn any challenge into a cause for celebration. And that, most importantly, love is a constant effort that needs to be nourished and cherished. And that's the story of Daniel and Sarah, a reminder that even in the busiest of lives, love and community should always come first. We hope you enjoyed their journey of forgiveness, redemption, and the power of a close-knit town. We were definitely moved by their amazing story and how they turned a mistake into a memorable moment that made a difference in everyone's life. What did you think of Daniel and Sarah's story? Did their experience resonate with you? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We love reading all your comments and appreciate your amazing feedback. If you were touched by their story and the power of community, please don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales just like this one. You don't want to miss our upcoming videos filled with inspirational and emotional journeys. We hope this story brought you a little warmth and reminded you of the importance of cherishing your loved ones. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you again in the next video.